This three-bean casserole is dumb.
Scooby-Doo-bop-biddy-bop-bop-bop. I'm so sorry, babe. I hadn't tasted him yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Looking forward to, you know.
Don't talk about the ingredients. I know. Yeah.
After, it's just a surprise for your mouth.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for another comic book review. Today we're reviewing X-Men #1, the reboot. This is the third time they rebooted X-Men in about the last 36 months. Seems a bit much to me, but I must say I came away pretty impressed. This is probably the best comic I think Jerry Duggan has written during his time in the X office. He's got the wonderful illustrations of Pepe, Larraz, and Marte Gracia backing him up on this, and it certainly helps because this is a vibrant, very dynamic comic book. Not the greatest thing I've ever read, but certainly worth your time. I definitely recommend it. There are a couple of issues I have, just with the overall narrative and stuff like that. I'll get into that. But for the most part, if you've been a fan of the X-Men since Dawn of X and into Reign of X and like what Jerry Duggan has done on Marauders and Cable and Planet Size X-Men, this is probably going to be closer to like a 5-star comic for you. Like, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. And I think people are going to enjoy this for the most part. I came away surprised. I'm pretty impressed. This is much better than I anticipated this debut to be. This is coming off the heels of Hellfire Gala, which in my opinion, people might disagree with me, was a big letdown. Well, is it a letdown? I had no expectations for it to be good, but I didn't think Ten of Swords was all that good. And I think Hellfire Gala was far below that in terms of quality. I think Ten of Swords, what it tried to really delivered on some of its premises, specifically the Arakko, Krakoa, original Four Horsemen type stuff. And it was kind of bogged down by a bunch of other things. Hellfire Gala, I don't know that it really delivered as well as it could have, really on much. I do think that Hellions issue in there was really good, but that wasn't really dealing with what was going on in Hellfire Gala. It was just some characters getting drunk and causing a ruckus. I think Planet Size X-Men, enormous implications, very cool stuff going on. Don't think that was executed all that well. Sword, just as far as the overall narrative and everything that was going on, was probably the best executed issue as far as that really had some stakes to it in Hellfire Gala. And then Way of X may have been, I don't know, was that even a good issue? It might have been. I'm still on the fence on that one. I thought it was odd. So that's kind of what we got leading up to this. This is the new X-Men team that was, essentially laid out in X-Men #20, the swan song for Jonathan Hickman on his X-Men run. Now he's going to be doing miniseries, and Jerry Duggan has the reins to the flagship title. Now, before I get into the details of this, I do want to point out, if you've been checking out the podcast, you'll see that on Wednesday mornings, to get you ready to go to your comic book shop, the guys from Comics Elite, Sean and Drew, they've been making some audios. Basically, they read every comic book that's major for Marvel, DC, and all the indies, and they talk about their top 10 comics each week. The comics that they thought were okay, but don't be expecting too much, and then the comics that you should outright skip. And that's been going up on the podcast. So if you want to be informed going in there, you can definitely check that out every Wednesday morning. And I do want to promote, these guys have got a lot of exclusive variant covers that they do. This week they had Ryan Kincaid. There's like a 3-set of Suicide Squad variant covers. He actually came into the shop and did a Wednesday signing on July 6th. Obviously that has passed. But if you go to their website, and there is a link in the video description below, you can get all 3 of these wonderful Suicide Squad comic covers from Ryan Kincaid. He has done a lot of work in the comic book industry for companies like DC Comics, Archie, Gotham Comics, Aftershock, Image, IDW, Counterpoint, Scout, Ablaze. He's worked for all of them. And you can see those are some pretty fun covers. Also, they have another exclusive cover for The Joker Presents a Puzzle Box. I believe this was actually a DC digital first from Matthew Rosenberg. Now it's coming out, obviously, in the floppy format. And we've got this cover from Megan Hutchinson Cates. That name may be familiar to a lot of people. That is the better half of the, I don't know, is he the hottest writer? Is he the best writer at Marvel Comics, Donny Cates? Well, his wife is quite the artist. You can see here we got a pretty damn good cover here. We've got the Joker hemmed up. We've got Poison Ivy. We got Bane. I almost missed the ventriloquist down in the corner, and we got some Joker fish on the cover. And this is also exclusive from Comics Elite. There is a link in the video description if you want to go to their website and check that out. They also do online auctions on their Facebook page. And they're all live, and they put a lot of cool stuff out there. You can get these there as well. So definitely go check those guys out, and definitely check out the podcast. It's on iTunes. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. It's on all those. You go in there, you type in Thinking Critical Comic Books, you will find the podcast, and Sean and Drew will tell you what they think are the comics to check out this week. This has nothing to do with my reviews. They have no influence on how I review comics. I have no influence on how they review comics, but they read every single one of them before they put them out on the shelves for the week. So you get an informed opinion about whether or not the comics are good. Now that I've got that wrapped up, let's get into this comic book and talk about what is so great about it. The first thing that we do have to talk about is this art. My goodness. Pepe the Raz. Eric Canetti, who's on the channel from time to time. Really nice guy. Fantastic artist. Worked in the animation industry, worked in the gaming industry, coming back into comic books. He terms Pepe the Raz as a hyper carry artist. And I asked him, what the heck do you mean by hyper carry? He said, any single thing that you put Pepe the Raz on is going to look better for it. And I must say I agree. This is great. There's a lot of good action in here. There's a pivotal sequence on the one big action piece where you've got this big X-Men mech like robot fighting this alien robot. Fantastic. Just looks like $1 million. You can see over here on the other side, there's some technology. You got some heads-up displays and whatnot with vitals, and they're doing some investigation onto this alien. Looks like $1 million. Of course, that could not be done without the wonderful work of Marte Gracia. Those two have been working together since the very first issue of House of X. Obviously, Marte Gracia also was the colorist for R.B. Silva on Powers of 10. This is a fantastically illustrated comic book. I don't know if it's a 4.5 or a 5 out of 5, but it's right up there. This is one of the better illustrated comics that you're going to find at Marvel Comics or DC or any of that for that matter. This is a fantastic illustrated comic. You are going to get your money's worth on the cover price just from the art from Pepe the Raz. He knocks it out of the park. There are a lot of interesting things that writer Jerry Duggan is attempting to do in this comic, and some of them are very successful. First thing I want to talk about is the inclusion of Ben York. For longtime Marvel readers, he is a reporter, one of the better reporters at the Daily Bugle. It turns out he is now, I believe, the co-owner of the Daily Bugle, and he's interrogating, of sorts, Cyclops. He's buttering him up a little bit when he shows off their new dwelling in Central Park in New York, talking about, hey, this is great and all this stuff. And then as he's about to leave, he starts bringing up, hey, there are dead mutants walking around. I'm aware that there are dead mutants walking the earth. I think this is a fantastic revelation. It's something that you would have thought would have come out in the past 2 years. People know that these mutants were dead. They're going to notice that they came back, especially since you can go through the portals and everything. Finally, they're acknowledging it. And this isn't the only time, but in my opinion, this is the most effective time. I think having a point of view character like Ben Urich overwatching or investigating and having questions about what's going on with the X-Men and why they have established their new headquarters in New York is a fantastic opportunity for really good, strong storytelling and to really open up this world and maybe make this X-Men comic a little bit more intriguing than we've been getting in the past. Not that I have a lot of problems with what Jonathan Hickman was doing. When he nailed it, but it didn't always feel like there was a coherent narrative. I think that Ben Urich can help Jerry Duggan provide that. I think he's a wonderful addition. Very smart on the part of Jerry Duggan, in my opinion. Now let's get to this action piece. This thing is nuts. You already saw the alien robot. It lands on Earth, and we do get our new X-Men team jumping in. We've got Polaris. We've got Jean Grey. We've got X-23. We've got Synch, Cyclops. We've got Sunfire, who you don't see is Rogue. She is already standing up to the alien robot. And things do not go well. When this alien robot emits this it's displayed as blue light, but it's some type of beacon or beam. It's affecting the brains of the people and mutants in the area. They're all getting severe migraines. You can see them kind of shutting down. So what happens is Polaris, thinking smart, grabs a bunch of metal and encapsulates the X-Men team to protect them. Jean Grey uses her telepathic abilities to protect their minds from the invader so they can come up with a strategy. And the strategy they come up with, I'm going to be honest, I think it's hogwash, but it's executed so well in the art and it's so out there and fun that I'm going to forgive it. Because the way it's explained is that Sync is still synced up with Forge. So he's got all of those, the powers of invention and all the things that Forge brings to the table, although he's not on the team. You've also got Polaris, who can shape and change metal and all that stuff. You got Jean Grey. So you got the whole team here, and they decide to bring all the metal, and they make their own X-Men like mech armor, Voltron-like character. It's nuts. It makes no sense. I don't think that this would work, but I'm going with it because it was so much fun and so silly. And they he's got these enormous hands, and Pepe the Larraz, my goodness. Just for the design on the robot itself, he should get a bonus. He should get double whatever they decided to pay him, because he earned it and then some just with the design of this X-Men like mech robot thing. It is badass. It's easily the most fun thing in this comic book. Just seeing it, I was smiling. And, like I said, it's basically kind of like a Voltron. They've all got their own responsibilities to perform while they're in there. And of course, in the end, they are able to dispatch the alien robot by creating a breach in the hull. And when, X-23 dives into the alien robot, rips it to shreds from the inside out, and defeats it, we do get some explanation why that alien was there and what it was doing by the end of this. But this part, silly, a little bit over the top. Okay, a lot over the top, but I enjoyed it. This is why you read comic books, right? For fun. This was nuts. This is and the art absolutely helped. And this mech robot, who does lose an arm by the end of the battle, he's not going away, folks. He's being used as a lighthouse out in the Atlantic. Hopefully they bring him back. You don't just sit this cool thing out there for no reason, right? He's got to come back at some point. Next, let's get into some of the failures of this comic book. There's fun to be had. There's some cool things introduced, including these three characters that we're looking at right here, but there's not really a story. There's not like a through-point narrative, like one thing that must be overcome. Obviously, the alien itself, but there's all these things that are happening that are booking in the comic. It almost feels like the story is three different entities have noticed the X-Men and Krakoa, and they're mad. Like, okay. I think it probably would have worked better if they introduced one of these in an issue rather than all three of these. I think it prevents the comic from having a through narrative and becomes more of what I'd call a high spot comic, where it's just a bunch of stuff almost randomly happening. The first character that we have, his name is Kelvin Heng. I believe all three of these new villains are brand new. I don't think any of them have ever been in the Marvel Universe before. I could be wrong. If I am wrong, definitely let me know in the comments section. And that was another thing that probably was, I wouldn't say a failure, but introducing three completely separate villains in the exact same issue where you've got this enormous action scene or whatever, it's a bit overwhelming. It's like, who is this? Who is this? Did I forget something? And I don't think I did. So I think it might have been a bit much as far as the new information. This first character, his name is Kelvin Heng. He is some type of super genius. He was screwed out of a large sum of money in his first IPO when he was 15 years old. I believe his parents stole his money. But he comes back for more. He's a self-made millionaire. He's a wonder kid. And there's something else going on there. I'm not certain what he's done for his body. But his eye was on Mars. His goal was for his company to be the ones that went and terraformed Mars. Obviously, the mutants just screwed that up for him. And he is not very happy. And in one part it says, changing his body for Mars was far easier than changing Mars for his body. So he's done something to his body to adapt himself so he could be prepared to go up and terraform and colonize Mars himself. That opportunity has been taken away from him, and he definitely blames the mutants. So that's the first villain. The next villain happens to do with that alien. And if I'm being completely honest, I think Jerry Duggan would have been more successful if he would have concentrated on that big action scene with the alien robot that shows up, probably not change anything, and then look into this character, Cordyceps Jones, a little bit more. This deals with Game World, and it turns out they're on this big casino. That robot was sent to Earth as a part of like a gambling game. People were betting money on how long it would take for this robot to take over Manhattan, and the X-Men won. People were not happy. I think a man lost his fortune, or at least an alien. I don't know if he was a man or not. And then we get this character reveal coming out of this astronaut's corpse. The character's name is Cordyceps Jones. Interesting stuff here at the end. I think it was a bit repetitive. The dialogue in this is not as clean as you would hope. There's much to wager on, but I know the most popular game at this tournament will be the Sol system. Obviously, Mars is now the capital of the Sol system, and the mutants are at the forefront. Earth is finally ruptured like a tumor, and now it's got to go. Let's take out the Earthlings before they ruin a planet we all care about. The contest is simple. Beat the Earthlings, but lead the planet. I can't stress that second part enough. There's no sense wasting a good planet already in a habitable zone. It'd be a perfect neighborhood if it weren't for the Earthlings. Like that last part was absolutely redundant. So we've got Game World, and Cordyceps Jones wants to wipe out all the humanoids, the humans and the mutants on Earth so they can go inhabit it because apparently Earth is rupturing like a tumor. I'm assuming they're aware of what's going on Mars. We're going to need some more clarification on that, but I think this is probably the story that should have been the through point of the entire narrative of this comic. I think it would have been more successful. The last character, who I thought actually was the first character, I thought this last reveal of Dr. Stasis was actually like a different version of Kelvin Hang. By the time I'm done, I think this is a distinct third villain because he has a completely different point of view of what he wants to take down. He is doing all of these experiments, and he is trying to upgrade the human form, make it more survivable, and there's doing all these kinds of experiments in New Jersey. Of course it's in New Jersey, in a place called the Oblivion Institute. This character's name is Dr. Stasis. And his problem is he's also figured out that the Krakoans can resurrect people. And this is what he has to say. He's also jealous, much like the very first character. Like I said, there's a little bit two similarities. They should have been introduced separately, in my opinion. This is what Dr. Stasis says. I've labored so long, and to be eclipsed by inferiors was so demoralizing, but I continue to persevere because I must. No time to ruminate on past failings. I must learn how I was bested. Krakoa is a dangerous tumor on this planet, and it is metastasizing. It will be the death of humanity if I am not able to cut it out. But first, I must know how the mutants resurrecting the dead. You've got Dr. Stasis, aware of resurrection, wanting to replicate that and trying to do that with humans. You've also got Ulrich, completely aware of resurrection and wanting to investigate that and find out what's going on Krakoa. Interesting stuff, and definitely a way forward for X-Men to do something a little bit different while Jonathan Hickman goes and explores the stuff that was introduced in House of X Powers of 10. Finally, there are a couple things that I was less than impressed with that I don't think made a lot of sense. Or I think they were supposed to be cool reveals, but I don't okay. The X-Men team itself now have a headquarters in Central Park called the Treehouse, and that's exactly what it is. It's a big treehouse that they grew, and it's got all these landmarks of mutants fallen to celebrate Krakoa. Why would humans allow them to put that there, even if they did buy it? I don't think this treehouse in Central Park is as cool as Jerry Duggan probably thinks it is. Pepe Larraz makes it look cooler than it is, but it's still, I was like, okay, neat, not, whatever. And then this next part, when the mech armor for the X-Men has been victorious, after X-23 has cut out the guts of that alien intruder, we get the Avengers showing up and the Fantastic Four. And guess what? They're all friends. This does not make sense whatsoever, especially the Fantastic Four. Reed Richards knows what Charles Xavier did to his mind. He knows that he went in there and erased his memory so that he couldn't help his son anymore and potentially harm mutants in the future. Why would Ben Grimm and the Fantastic Four come up to these guys acting like they're besties? That makes no sense. Also, why are the Avengers on such good terms with these guys? The mutants are a clear and present danger. They just colonized Mars. They have millions of war-hardened veteran mutant soldiers waiting on Mars to come through the gates and destroy Earth at a moment's notice. Why would Captain America, Iron Man, and any of the Avengers be good with this? They're just go, good job, X-Men. Hope you guys are doing okay. Talk to you next week, Ben. None of this makes sense. And why all of a sudden are the X-Men representing Krakoa in some type of friendly fashion now? Krakoa is the adversary of the entire world. That's the way that they've presented themselves. Charles Xavier and Magneto literally sat at a table with diplomats and told them, there's nothing you can do about it. We're going to do this and this and this. We're going to use all of your systems against you, and there's nothing you can do about it. We control the world now. All of a sudden, they're friendly? When did this happen? There's an enormous shift in tone. Also, why aren't they setting the table for Sunfire to turn on the team and go selfish? He's just like, yeah, let's do it. So there's definitely some mischaracterization going on here. Hopefully that gets cleaned up. But overall, not the greatest issue of all times, but certainly enjoyable. Better than I expected. I definitely recommend it. I imagine if you're an X-Men fan that has been enjoying the things that have been happening around the Jonathan Hickman stuff, you're going to love this, even more than I did. But I think this is a very promising start. Pepe Larraz brings the heat. Marte Gracia in tow, absolutely. Those two bring it. I like the inclusion of Ben Elric. I think that is a very smart idea. I think it's going to go some places. There is a dynamite action scene in here. We got an X-Men mech armor. Didn't make a whole lot of sense, but who cares? It's comic books, and that was a lot of fun. We got 3 brand new villains introduced. I think that was a bit much. I think they probably should have concentrated on the Cordyceps Jones villain from Game World that had to do with the actual alien robot that showed up, and maybe introduce Kelvin Heng and Dr. Stasis later in their own sort of way. I think throwing 3 brand new villains that nobody knows who they are is a bit much for one comic book. I think it makes the narrative a bit aimless. It makes it more of a high spot comic rather than a cohesive narrative. There are a couple things I didn't like, but for the most part, this is good. The art's fantastic. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this. Well done, Jerry Duggan. You subverted my expectations and delivered a pretty banging #1 comic book. And don't forget to visit my friends at Comics Elite and check out those exclusive covers they have. And those aren't the only ones. And definitely check out their podcast each Wednesday morning on the Thinking Critical Comic Book podcast and see what their recommendations are. They're all informed, and I think you're going to love it.